So today's class is a Gua Sha class for the whole body. Gua Sha is an ancient form of Chinese massage. I'll show you a Gua Sha tool. Here's mine. It's a stainless steel one. It's got lots of different edges to it, uneven, unusual angles so that you can use it to get into lots of different places. If you go on Trade Me, you can buy them, from really cheap, like $9, $10, right the way up to about $50, and they're made of all different things. But the stone ones are lovely and the stainless steel ones are really lovely. If you haven't got a Gua Sha tool, then you go into your kitchen drawer and you just find a spoon or a spatula, but just make sure that it's got lovely smooth edges. You don't want to be using anything that's got a hard edge that could cut or it just doesn't feel nice. So if you've got a nice smooth edge, then you can use that to sort of get into your trigger points. You can use the long arm of the spoon to do sort of broad strokes on some of those really big muscles like quadriceps and things. So we're going to start with the scalp, and we're going to just start with come to the middle of the hairline, and you're just going to get, if you're using a spoon, you want a pointed edge. So if you're using a spoon, you'd be using this edge of the spoon, and you're just going to do very minute circles. You're not using a lot of pressure. So just enough pressure that you can feel the massage through the fascia into that superficial fascia into the deeper muscle. So it's really lovely. If you do the scalp, you're going to, it's very calming, it's very relaxing, but it's also going to bring you into a more alert state as well. So then you go into that midpoint, and then you're going to come a third of the way, or maybe half of the way out on the hairline, and you're just going to do that second trigger point. So trigger points, if you're talking about Chinese medicine, they're talking about meridians and different points on the body. There is an overlap, even though they're two very different, modalities. So come to the other side. Okay, so from a trigger point of view, it's a nerve ending. From Chinese medicine point of view, it's a meridian. So really talking about the same things, but talking in a different language. So what I want you to do is go back to that center one now, and you could turn your spoon or your Gua Sha tool and just come down the hairline. Nice and smooth, not huge pressure, not when you're dealing with the skull and the face. Come to the front of the ear and then just contour the ear and come behind. So just do that a few times, maybe 3 times. So it's rinsing. You're pressing the fluid, the lymph and the blood through the tissues, and you're moving it forward so that it refills behind the tool. So then as it's refilling with fresh, nutrient-dense fluid. So it's all the same principles as the trigger point classes. Okay, so we'll try the other side. Go from the midpoint, you're going around the line of your hair. You might already notice there's a few tender places, but we're just gonna do the broad strokes. You come to the front of the ear, so that's your mastoid process, and then you're coming behind. So the hinge of the jaw links into behind that is the mastoid process behind the ear. So do that 2 more times. So doing these face and head massages is really rejuvenating. It's great for the skin. It gets rid of toxins. It relaxes tight muscles. It reduces the lines in the face, which is, is a good thing. So come back to a more angular point on your spoon or your Gua Sha tool, and we're going to start in the center, and we're going to do little tiny circles, and we're just going to keep moving upwards and backwards. You're not using a lot of pressure. This should feel nice. It wants to be stimulating without being confronting. So you decide, especially by how tender it is as well. There's lots of trigger points on the skull. You might have noticed a few as you're doing this. You're coming all the way around, past the occiput, the round part of the back of the skull, until you reach the rim of the skull. Okay, so then you're going to come out a little bit. So if any of you have done the trigger point class for the head and the face, and you've got the chart with all the points on, then you can really start to see that we're following those lines that go up from the eyebrow, that contour the skull. So doing little circles. You don't need to do it for very long. So you're really talking to your nervous system here. So it's going to bring you into quite an alert state, but it's also a lovely, lovely thing to do. Any sort of head massage always makes you feel good. Come to the rim of the skull and take the tool away. So then you're coming down again. So I'm not quite at the temple here. And it always surprises me how many really tender places there are here. So if you're doing this, you know, at home, you'd probably find somewhere tender. You'd probably just spend a little bit more time here. I could easily do just one class on the skull and the face. So we're doing this super quickly because we want to do the whole body. Just to give you a few ideas of what you could do. So using the Gua Sha tool or the spoon, obviously it gives you that very acute direct pressure, but it also saves your fingers and your thumbs. So be gentle around the temples. There's lots of trigger points around the temple. It's a well-known area for stress and tension. I've got quite a lot here. So if you grit your teeth, the tension is going to jump right up into the temple area, through the muscles. Some people grind their teeth at night. It's where we get our tension headaches. So lots and lots of really sore places here, which is making me think we'll do another class of Gua Sha and we'll do it just on the head and the face. Okay, so we're just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. So starting at the midline, finishing at the temple. So we'll do the other side. Start in the hairline. You're just gradually doing those little circles and you're spiraling backwards. So you're drawing lines around the contour of your head. You're following those lines. Interestingly, I'm noticing I'm a lot more tender on this side. Not sure why. I need to do a course in neuropsychology to understand why some of these things happen. It's not enough lifetime to fit it all in, but I'm very sore through this side. It's interesting. And often with brain, you know, if you've got something on this side, it's coming from the opposite side of the brain. So the brain crosses over. So, oh, I found a really, really nasty trigger point there. So note to self, you go back there later on, you give that a little bit of attention. So then you come out again. So really it's like quarters coming down between the midline and the ear. So now I'm into the third line, which is just above the temple. And again, very sore for me, very sore through here. Could be just gritting your teeth when you're sleeping. Could be the way we sleep, who knows? But there's definitely a difference. So we should never ignore pain. It's telling us there's something wrong. It's the red flashing light on the dashboard, and it's telling you there's something to investigate. So pain is there for a reason, to tell us there's a problem. And if we give these things a bit of attention, we can start to address them. So the final one is the temple. Be gentle there because we know that's hollow there and we don't want to be pushing hard with anything metal. And just gently working outwards. And really, if these places are sore, you're not going to want to press too hard. You're just going to do gentle touch, talk to the nervous system, talk to the brain, what's going on here. So yeah, I've got a whole cluster of angry triggers around this area for me. I have had a little bit of toothache and it could be connected with that. Okay, so we've done all of that. Just move the head and just close your eyes for a minute and just notice how much more aware your brain is now of your skull and generally your whole body. You're much more alert now. So you're working through that vagal system as we've done before and just bringing ourselves into that alert frontal state. So now you want to find a smooth edge on your spoon or your Gua Sha tool, and you're going to come to your sternocleidomastoid, this muscle that runs from the collarbone to the ears, but we're only going to work the top third. So there's major blood vessels down through the front of the neck here. You don't want to be pushing with a hard tool. And you're just going to gently massage from front to side. Okay, so we've talked about calcifications building up on vertebrae in the neck and in joints. And also in blood vessels, you get calcifications in the blood vessels in the arteries. So if you were to rub on that carotid artery, if there is calcifications building up on the inside of the artery, you could dislodge little pieces and they could go up into the brain. So that's, something to be avoided. You don't want to do that. So if you just focus on the upper third with the Gua Sha tool, you'll be okay. You can come up to behind the ear because the blood vessels are much deeper in this upper part. You're not going to reach them. So then you could work into, if I turn sideways, you could work into your scalings at the side of the neck. So again, there's nothing here that you need to worry about. You're just going across. You can come down a little bit. As you come down towards the collarbone, there are blood vessels that run across parallel with the collarbone. So you notice it feels a little bit more nervy here as well. You've got nerves, you've got blood vessels here. You can do it as long as you're gentle. And maybe you want to do a few going upwards through the scalings. Okay. We're going to do the ones at the back in a minute. So just come to your sternocleidomastoid, upper third, and you're just you can work upwards behind the ear. So this is why you want a nice rounded, smooth edge to your tool. If you do any of this and you think, oh no, my spoon is really not working for this, then just switch to fingers. You can't go wrong with fingers. Okay? So that way you don't miss anything out. So I'm going up and then I'm going across from front to side. It was really lovely to come in here. And then we're going across the scalings. So scalings can be split into 3 groups, upper, middle, and lower. And you're just going to be a little bit more gentle on the lower ones. Because as you come lower, you're getting near to a group of nerves that go down under the collarbone, and you've got a blood vessel there as well, an artery. Your subclavian artery goes through here. So just gentle. Okay, so we're going to do suboccipitals. I've seen videos where people use their Gua Sha tools on the suboccipitals, but if you feel with your fingers at the back of your skull, you've got your mastoid process behind the ear, you've got a really big muscle, your capitis muscles, and then you've got an indentation. So that's called your suboccipital triangle. If you were to push your fingers into this triangle, very, very deep is your suboccipital artery. So for the same reason as you don't want to be dislodging calcifications in the front of the carotid artery, you don't want to be pressing on here. So, you could do this with your fingers. So we'll do that. We're in that little soft indentation. We're just going inwards and outwards. So this is a vagal nerve release. So it's really going to bring you into a very alert, happy, balanced state. So like I say, I have seen people doing this with Gua Sha tools, and I just think it's not worth the risk. Sometimes in our life, if our diet's poor, we get where our arteries can, the artery walls can be a little bit undermined, and we can get broken blood vessels in fingers and whatever. And if that was to happen here, it would be, it would be more serious. So you don't want to irritate that artery by rubbing with anything too hard. So just feel where that indentation is now. Feel the rim of the skull, and then feel up a bit. You can feel there's really deep muscle. So if that's the underside of the skull, you've got really deep muscle just above the bone. So you can use your Gua Sha tool to come into here. So what you're going to do is you're going to use either the round part of your spoon. So maybe, you know, that way, so that you've got no sharp edges. And you're just going to massage from behind the ear. You're going to be massaging gently upwards. So it's a sort of a scoop. So you're nowhere near that indentation, you're above it, but you're in the muscles, the suboccipital muscles that run above the rim of the skull. And there's lots and lots of trigger points here. And from Chinese medicine point of view, they would call these, they've all got names, all these different points. So I don't study Chinese medicine, but you can feel the places that are tender. So you're just, again, you're rinsing, you're pushing upwards, you're moving the fluid out of that place, allowing it to refill behind, and you're gradually working inwards towards the center line at the back of your skull. So you're on muscle. And, you know, if you found anything that was really tender, you could get the point of your Gua Sha tool and you could do little tiny circles. So we're on the muscle, not in the indentation. So you can either do little circles or you can do the scoop. If you've got a Gua Sha tool, you've got different curves and angles. So here's a curve here. So you could use that curve. I know Leslie's got one similar to me. You could gently push up, do that whole area. But it's quite nice to do, you know, go along and just figure out where the places are. Some exquisitely painful places through here, and they just really want to be released. So you don't need to do it for very long, maybe 6 strokes. So then change over to the other side, start behind the ear, and you're just pushing up again. I'm going to have to get my skates on, hey, if we're going to get the whole body done. Like I say, you could easily just do the head and the face and the neck, easily. So I'm working from the back of the ear to the center line at the back of the skull. Maybe 4 or 5 strokes in each place. And if you find anything that's really sore, you could think, oh, well, maybe I'll do this tonight while I'm watching television. I might just get my little tool out. I might just come back to these sore places. So just to recap, avoid the blood vessels at the front of the neck and in that indentation either side, behind the mastoid process, either side of those strong capitis muscles. So the capitis muscles, if you take your left hand and just put your hand on the vertebra coming out of your skull, and then move that way, and you find there's a really big, strong ridge of muscles coming down. So these muscles, you can feel hardness underneath them. These are the processes that come out at the side of your vertebra. So just get an angle on your spoon or your Gua Sha tool, and just, so you don't want to be using the point, but you want to be using an edge, and just gently, just do a sort of a scooping massage, and you're coming down the back of the neck. It was lovely here because this is a place where we hold so much tension. So keep your left hand on the vertebra of your cervical spine, your neck, so that you're not on the bones. You're not ever pushing on the vertebra. You're just working on the thick muscle that's just adjacent to it. And you're coming down. So you've got 7 cervical vertebrae. You're working down through each. It's best to look forward. If you turn your head, those muscles will bunch up, but you want them to be fairly relaxed as you come down. And then you're starting to slope outwards with the curve of the neck, and you're coming into levator scapulae and trapezius. So these muscles are all very connected to neck stiffness and pain. And now I'm just sort of doing an up and a down. As you lift your elbow to do this, your trapezius becomes very active. So if you wanted to, you could put the hand on the thigh and you could do this with your opposite hand. Okay, now if you've got a Gua Sha tool, you've got that little indentation. That is perfect for contouring your trapezius. So one point is at the front and one point is at the back. If you're using a spoon, you would just get the shaft of the spoon and you would just keep going from front to back. Or you might try the actual spoon part and just, you know, get creative, just move it around and just find what feels good. So there's a universal trigger point just as the neck starts to slope into the shoulder. Trigger point 1, trigger point 2. That has also got a special name in Chinese medicine, which I've forgotten now. You know, so the one at the back, that's a very well-known point, and it's a universal point. So if you get a pointed edge of your spoon or your Gua Sha tool, and you just go in there, you could add a few head turns, you'll find that spot quite easily. So this is where, you know, trigger point work and Gua Sha sort of combine. So they sort of overlap here. So just work into that area. You could do circles. You could use direct pressure, ischemic pressure. You can come down, but just avoid prominent bones. So you don't want to come to the point of the shoulder. Massaging on bones is not going to be pleasant. So just see how that feels now. If you close your eyes and doing a bit of assessment, you can feel that feels lovely, even that very short amount of time. So then take your Gua Sha tool over to the other side. You're just feeling the bones of the neck where they come out of the skull. Put your fingers on the spine, and then you're coming into the side. Just out from that, you're coming down those big, strong capitis muscles. So I'm doing a sort of up and down massage. You're coming down. So each vertebra is pretty thick. It's a couple of centimeters, 2 to 3 centimeters deep. So you're coming down each of those 7 vertebrae. You might find a few really nasty triggers as you come down here. So keep coming down until you get to the slope where the neck starts to move out towards the shoulder. And then you could change the, you know, you could choose a curve, or you could choose the, I don't know what you'd call that bit, but it's, you know, it's a 2-pronged part of the tool, and you're going to come into your trapezius. So again, if the elbow is up, the trapezius is very active, you might prefer to do it with your opposite hand, coming down. As soon as you feel hard bone, you stop. You don't want to go onto your shoulder blades. You don't want to go onto your acromion, which is the point of the shoulder. And it's pretty tight through here. So, you know, if I wasn't doing the class, I'd be staying here and giving this a bit of attention. So find your universal trigger point. You've got, if you put your thumb at the front, your fingers at the back, we're focusing on the one at the back. You find a pointed part of your spoon or your tool, and you're just going to use your opposite hand, rest this arm on your thigh, and just get in there. And you can move your neck. So if you add the movement, that's called a torsional release. You're stretching your muscle, moving your muscle as you press on the trigger. So that speeds up the release. You can use that anywhere in the body, not just the neck, but especially effective for the neck. Okay, so just come back and just do a shoulder roll. So the sternum, we're just going to come down the sternum. So you've got a major stress point here. So if you were to measure up 4 fingers from the bottom of your breastbone, you'll feel there's a little indentation in the breastbone. So it's 4 fingers of your hand, not anybody else's. You'll feel that little indentation. That's called the Sea of Tranquility. Chinese use lovely names for things. And it's a pressure point for calming and for relaxing. So you can gently use your trigger point tool, don't be rough, and just do some little circles in this place. Surprising how sore these places can be when they're congested and, you know, blocked. So 4 fingers up, the sea of tranquility, tells you what it does, brings you into a nice calm state. And then another really interesting trigger point, not Chinese medicine, but trigger point, is if you go from the heart side to the opposite side, find the bottom of your breastbone and come down between the next 2 ribs. So you've got the bottom of the breastbone, you feel a rib and then another rib. Find the space in between the ribs. And there's a trigger point here, which affects your pericardium. So it causes arrhythmias, it causes palpitations. So you're finding that point of tenderness. So where the ribs come down, you're right on the bottom of the rib cage. It's almost like a bone that comes around. You're between 2 ribs, just below the breastbone, on the opposite side to your heart. And if it's tender in there, it's working to release all the muscles and all the fascia that are around the heart through the nervous system. Okay, and then also if you come up either side of your sternum, just between the ribs. So the main one is in the middle of the sternum, the breastbone, but you can go up or you can go down. If there's any areas of tenderness there, this is going to cause tightness in the heart area. It's going to cause tightness in the breathing muscles as well, pectorals. So the main one to look at in trigger points is right in the center of the breastbone, on the edge, on the joint of the breastbone, and between the 2 ribs. There's a little indentation you can feel. So you might want to find it with your fingers first, find the point of tenderness, and then use the Gua Sha tool because it saves your fingers and your thumbs. And you could do the other side. So for me, both of these are quite tender. So any sort of stress, any sort of anxiety, these breathing muscles, you're breathing in a slightly different way. These breathing muscles get fired up and their triggers get a little bit unhappy as well. So find your left hand to right side, find your collarbone, and you're going to use the smooth edge of the spoon or the Gua Sha tool, and you're just going to come above the bra line, so not on breast tissue, and you're just going to work upwards. So you can just, quite nice to do it this way. So you're working upwards towards your shoulder. You're not on breast tissue, you're on muscle. You take your arm out. You don't need to do very much for this to be effective. And then you're going to take that hand to your shoulder and you're going to come to the back of your armpit. So these are your rotator cuff trigger points. Some very sore places through here. So there's a whole group of muscles that make up the rotator cuff and they work super hard. And so they're always a little bit irritated, especially if you're right-handed, right side, that's going to be quite active. So you're sort of fanning upwards and outwards and just finding anything that's a little bit tender. Okay, you could do the serratus muscles, the breathing muscles. So when you see someone who's really muscular, you see those fingers, those muscles that look like fingers, that's your serratus, and you're just getting into them as well. A little bit ticklish around here. And while you're here, you could do the shoulders. So you've got a middle shoulder muscle, you've got a front shoulder muscle, you've got a back shoulder muscle. So you're just going from medial, anterior, posterior. And then we could come down the arm. So just gentle on your biceps. We've got blood vessels, big blood vessels in the arms. You don't want to irritate them. But the main point that you want to come to is if you turn your hand palm back, the line from your little finger, if you go along there, can be really sore along that line. Or alternatively, if you turn your thumb up, you come down the line from the thumb. So this is your sort of tennis elbow line. You know, if you've been doing lots of repetitive movements and you get that painful elbow and forearm. So thumb line or little finger line, either of those, you've got big muscles here, they can be quite unhappy. So that's all we're going to do for the minute. So come back to the other side and we're going to find a smooth edge on our Gua Sha tall, and we're going to work from the breastbone and we're going to fan upwards towards the collarbone. You could take our arm out. So if you're doing this on bare skin, clothing, you can do it on clothing, no problem. But if you're doing it on bare skin, you need moisturizer, just so you've got a bit of glide, so it's not dragging. So just working above the bra line, in the muscle, not in the breast tissue, under the collarbone. There's a lot of trigger points through here. You take the arm out, you're using that torsional release. And then you're going to take your hand to the back of your armpit and you're fanning upwards and outwards and downwards. So just come through that area. See if you can find, if you keep your other hand on your shoulder, it's going to help you to find those muscles, because as you hold your shoulder, these muscles become quite active and then you can notice if they're painful. So I found a really nasty one here. So this is your teres major and your teres minor, part of the rotator cuff. And if you come down, you're into latissimus dorsi. And then if you come into the sides of the chest, you're into your serratus. So all of those can be quite tight. So then we come to the front of the shoulder, the middle of the shoulder, the back of the shoulder. So when you see tutorials on Gua Sha, you can do a Gua Sha whole body rinse in about 5 minutes, or even less if you get really proficient. You can do it in the shower, because that way you've got soap on your body. It's quite nice to do it in the shower. You get that lymphatic drainage. And then a nice sort of brisk towel rub afterwards and you're ready to go. So it doesn't need to take an hour, but you can just address all these things. So hands, really lovely to do hands if you're doing a lot of typing or using your hands a lot. So this is called the thenar process here, thenar mount, and it's the muscle of your thumb. So if you just get your Gua Sha tool and you just rub on that big muscle at the base of your thumb. So it's surprising how much tension there can be in there. And then go in the webbing between the thumb and the first finger. So you can get really sore in these muscles if you're doing lots of gripping. You could go to the back of the thumb and go into that same place in the webbing. So this is your thenar process. You can put your hand on your thigh. It makes it a little bit easier to get to. And then your hypothenar is on the outer side of the thumb, on the little finger side. So you can see there's a mound here as well. So if you massage that, feels really lovely. These are things you can do while you're watching telly at night. And then follow the tendons from the wrist to the thumb, to the first finger, second finger, third finger, fourth. Just do that a few times. And then, you can get your Gua Sha tool if you've got the edges, and you can do the sides. So the side of the thumb in reflexology is connected to your spine. So if you've got, a stiff back, you can do the outside of the thumb. And I can't remember now what the little finger is. Like I say, you have to study this. It's a whole subject to study on its own. So you can go on the insides and the outsides of your fingers. Again, if you've got a shaped Gua Sha tool, it's perfectly shaped to do that, nice and quickly, nice and easily. You don't need to spend much time on this. You can do the pads of your fingers. There's a special point here. If you come, you've got your little finger and your next finger. If you come down to the line of your wrist, the crease of your wrist, there's a point here, which is really good if you, for insomnia, if you can't sleep, you just, with your finger, you just press on here. If you look at the crease of your palm, you can do all the way along here. Be gentle because there's blood vessels here, but you can go with the end of your tool and you can just do little minute circles There's a universal pain trigger point, well, it's really Chinese medicine. If you bring your thumb and your finger together, look at the crease of your hand, just behind the crease, with the point of your tool. This is a universal point for pain. So it brings pain relief. So if you have pain, you could do that with you could grip it and do a trigger point release. Or if you've got your Gua Sha tool, you can just use that. Just do little circles. So we did that. Did I do the thumb line? I don't think I did on this side. Thumb line, the little finger line, just come down those muscles. Just make sure I haven't missed anything out. And wiggle your fingers as you're doing it. So really great if you spend a lot of time on the computer or gardening or painting. For Carol, painting. You're using these muscles, you just want to relax them. So other side, we've already done the thumb line and the ulnar line. So now we're going to come to the thenar process, which is that big mound under the thumb. And we're just going to find the edge that we want to use on the spoon or the tool. And we're just massaging. It's a really deep muscle and your hands just feel so lovely. Sometimes people do the hand release before they do the whole Gua Sha thing. Because you're using your hands to do the release. So maybe you start with the hands, it's up to you. So then the hypothenar mound is this big muscle at the base of your little finger, and it just feels lovely to come along here. So then we followed the tendons from the wrist to the thumb, to the first finger, to the second finger, to the third, to the fourth. And just do that a couple more times. So it's a bit like what we do with the ball in the trigger point classes. When we put our feet on balls, we follow the tendons, stimulating the lymphatic drainage, the blood flow. So then we did the outside of the thumb, if you've got that special tool. And this is the line that correlates with your spine. So if you've got a stiff back, you would work down the outside of your thumb. Some of the stuff that we did for the chest and the arm, they're specifically for the heart and for breathing. I forgot to mention that. I can't remember what the ulnar line is, but you come up the outside of your hand. So just like we do reflexology and there's points in the feet that relate to the whole body, it's the same with the hands. So everything you're doing here is affecting something. You can do up the outside of a finger and down the inside, up one side, down the other. So that's why it maybe is worth investing in a Gua Sha tool, is because they've got that lovely indentation that you can use for getting into all these places. And just a small tool like this, you can do your whole body. Okay, then we're going to come to little finger and the next finger, where the wrist line is. There's a point here. So this is an insomnia point. If you can't sleep, you just press on this point. So you do it with your thumb if it's the middle of the night, and you just do some little circles here. You go to the Sea of Tranquility in here, and that would just help as well. Come along the little circles all the way along the wrist line. We did the webbing between the thumb and the first finger. So you can get really sore in here if this muscle gets overused. Another stress point. So there's a stress point at the little finger, next finger. There's the Sea of Tranquility, and then there's one at the pineal gland. So you're just going here, just gentle, little circles, just brings you into a calm state, regulates your breathing. So if you can't sleep, you try these points. The pain, the universal trigger pain point is Close the thumb to the fingers. Look at where the crease comes. Go just behind the crease and little circles here. So, you know, if it's a center line thing like the Sea of Tranquility or the pineal gland, then there's one. If it's like this one, you've got to do both sides. So you've got a right hand and a left hand, so you do both. So if you're in pain, you would just grip thumb and finger behind and you just squeeze, close your fingers and you just squeeze that point and do a trigger point pressure. Or you can use your Gua Sha tool just to save your thumbs. So thoracolumbar, you're going to grab your spoon or your tool and just sort of go sort of on the inside of your shoulder blades. You were fairly limited to how far down we can go. But just do anything between the spine and the shoulder blade. So this is rhomboids. I'm going like this, I'm going across. So the rhomboids tend to grow downwards in that direction. So if you do a diagonal scrub, we're getting into those. So unfortunately, this is one where this is the part of the body that we can't quite reach unless we've got someone to do it for us, maybe. So then the other side, so I'm scrubbing downwards on a diagonal. And then we're going to come to the multifidi and the spinalis muscles. So you've got your spine, you get your tool, and you're just going to reach up to wherever you can reach, and you're just going to do some little tiny movements. So this is maybe where the spoon surpasses the Gua Sha tool because it gives you a little bit more range, maybe. Sorry about the bandsaws next door. We've got building going on, so it's been pretty noisy for Zoom. And you're just gently coming down the spine. So I'm just doing one side of my spine, and I'm just doing little diagonal rubs down the spinal muscles. Feels really lovely to come down here. And you're going to keep going all the way down the SI joint, the sacroiliac joint. Come forward a bit on my chair. Until you're just between your tailbone and your sit bone. And then what you could do, if you're using a spoon, is you could hold the two ends of the spoon and you could do a little bit of this. So this is your serratus posterior inferior muscles. So breathing muscles at the bottom of your rib cage, your thoracolumbar fascia. There's a whole load of stuff here. So pretty sore here, actually. I'm quite surprised. So once you've done that, you're going to go to the other side and you're going to go up as high as you can reach with your spoon, and you're going to do those little diagonal massages. Like I say, you don't need to spend a lot of time here. You're just sending a message through the, I'm going to use my right hand because I can actually do it better with my right hand than I can my left. It depends how good you are, right-handed, left-handedness. And so I'm going downwards and outwards on a diagonal. It's really nice to come down these muscles. So these are your deep spinal muscles. You're not going to harm your spine, and there's no blood vessels here that you need to worry about. We're pretty good at knowing if we're using the right sort of pressure or not. I'm going to change hands now because my arm's getting tired. And I'm coming down the SI joint. So that's where your sacrum attaches to the pelvis. And you're coming down until you reach the sit bone and the tailbone, and just gently come all the way into that place. And then you're going to grab the spoon either end, and you're going to do that scrub. Not so sore on this side, which is always interesting to me, how one side differs from the other. Feels delicious. You can even get into your thoracolumbar fascia here. So these are some of your long muscles of your back that you can feel. Your longissimus and your iliocostalis. So stop there for a minute, and you can use your spoon still or your Gua Sha tool, and you're just going to feel with your fingers. You've got the lowest rib, the 12th rib, you've got the top of your pelvis, and you're just going to go into the side of your back muscles. So you can feel with your hand, there's a big ridge of muscle, a big long strip of muscle. You can push your thumb underneath that muscle, that's your quadratus lumborum. You can feel, if you push your thumb upwards a bit, you can feel that bottom rib, you're under the rib. You could do this with your thumb, or you could do this with your Gua Sha tool, or you could do this with your spoon. And just, obviously it's quite confronting to stick something metal in here, but if you use just the right amount of pressure, I'm using my spoon, it's quite good. It's just really lovely to get into this, the trigger points of this very deep back muscle, because it gets so tight and locked up. And you're doing like little strokes going down the outer border of your, what are your erector spinae muscles, and you're just massaging. So you're either going to be on your erector spinae or your quadratus, and it's all going to feel good. Not the rib, you don't want to be pushing on bone. And you're working your way down to the crest of your pelvis. So it's pretty tight in here. A lot of tension. I might switch to my spoon. Get creative and just find what feels nice. It's a bit like Baloo the bear in Jungle Book. You'll just know what to do to get to that itch, you know, you'll just find that point that just feels really lovely. So the end of the spoon is working really nicely here. So when you've done that, change sides. So find your 12th rib, find that ridge, that band of muscles that comes down. Feel with your thumb how you can go underneath that outer border of those muscles. And when you found that spot, then switch to your Gua Sha tool or your spoon and just go in there. So it's quite a confronting place to go into, but if you can learn how to relax your quadratus, you're going to find the key to really helping to manage deep back pain and hip pain. When you get pain on the outside of the hip, it's always coming from your quadratus and your glutes. It's very much linked to SI joint dysfunction. So if you can find a way to get in here with a ball or a tool or your fingers, you're going to be able to self-manage. You're working downwards. So quadratus lumborum does what it says. It attaches to the lumbar spine, stabilizes your lumbar spine. You're working down to the crest of your pelvis, trying to get under the pelvis. It's a little bit confronting to go in here with a metal tool, but you can always switch to a thumb if you prefer. Just be careful that you don't overwork your thumbs. Okay, so grab your tool or your spoon, and we're just going to turn sideways now. And you're just going to, you could bring this leg up, and you're just going to work your glute. So you go across, that's glute medius. You go around, your leg bone comes up. You go around here, that's glute minimus, glute maximus below. So just get, just go where it feels good. If you do a fan, you're going to get into your rotators, piriformis, and some smaller muscles below piriformis. They're all going to be pretty tight. Feels nice, actually. So this is the sort of thing you could do lying in bed, and just lie on your side, bring your leg across, and then just really work into these muscles. Like I say, if you've got back issues, if you've got SI joint issues, these muscles are always going to be in spasm and quite unhappy. And so you need to learn how to relax them again. So your rotators, the muscles that turn your leg to the side, is like a 6-fingered hand. So you're doing the fan, and they go from the pelvis to the leg bone. So anything through here is going to be gold. So come back into center, do a half turn the other way. So bring your leg across. I don't usually recommend crossing legs, but ideally, if you're lying in bed, then you can just bring the leg across without, putting too much pressure into the spine. So if you're going across, level with the rim of the pelvis, that is your glute medius. If you're going downwards or around the head of the leg bone, so you've got your femur, you've got your greater trochanter, all around the top of that is going to be glute minimus. Do your fan, you've got glute maxus down here. And you've got your rotators, that 6-fingered hand. So it's sort of deliciously uncomfortable. This feels like the thing you should do. Okay, so then if I turn front again, if you were to come forward on your chair and put your feet on the floor, if you were to put your hands in what would be your jean pockets, if you were wearing jeans, this is your tensor fascia lata. So always a muscle to keep an eye on. So you've got the crest of the pelvis, you come down, you move out a little bit, and it's there. And I find with this one that you do it and you think, oh, there's nothing here. But as you stay with it, it starts to relax, and then you find your triggers. So I could extend my leg. And the tensor fascia lata comes down about 1/3 of the way. The triggers are at the top. The muscle comes down about 1/3 of the way. So just stay up here. So if you think about where your hands would be, if you put your hands in your jeans, that's the spot. The other thing you can do is if you turn your foot outwards, that muscle reacts. So if you put your fingers there, turn your toes out, you feel it. Okay, so do the other side so we don't miss anything out. So you've got your hands in the jeans. If you turn your toe outwards, you feel that muscle reacting, and then you're just going to get into it. So again, lying on your side in bed is a much better way of finding this muscle. You come down about 1/3 of the way, but the triggers are up here at the top. So facing front again, spoon. The spoon is ideal for quads. You could just come up and down the thigh. So Gua Sha is the redness that you get. So as you do this, if you're looking on bare skin, you'll see that you get a flush. You get a red flush where the circulation is increasing. So that is Gua Sha in Chinese. So the Sha is the redness and the Gua is the tool. So it's a tool that makes you red is what it means. So you can do middle, inner, middle, outer. You're using your Gua Sha tool, choose the contour that you like. So triggers, you've got your iliotibial bands. The iliotibial band in Chinese medicine is linked with gallbladder. So it's an interesting one. If you've got issues with your knees and your ankles, the trigger points will be in, if you divide your outer thigh into 3 zones, they're 1, 2, 3 in the middle. So if you go just slightly upwards from the midline, the sideline of your leg, you'll find it's pretty tender in there. So that is your vastus lateralis, so quadriceps. And then the other ones would be just on the inside of the knee. There's trigger points here. So this is your medialis, vastus medialis. They're pretty tender through here. As you come up, you're dealing with your adductors, your inner thighs. And the adductors are silent but deadly. They're often really tight, really sore, but you wouldn't know until you try this. So there's 3 different muscles. There's a medium-sized one, a long one, and there's a big one. So gravis, longus, brevis, and what's the other one? Magnus. So you just, anywhere through here, you'll find tenderness. Maybe you're going to come down into the deep muscle of your calf, outer side. So the triggers for the calf are here. Okay, so you just try that. It might be quite tender in there. Do some circles, or you could just do some longer strokes. If you've got varicose veins, remember blood vessels, and anything with a pulse we're avoiding. Also moles, if you've got moles or skin tags, you know, obviously common sense tells you not to go near those. Don't irritate them. So I'm doing the inner part of the calf, I'm doing the outer part of the calf. If you've got Achilles tendonitis, you come up the tendon into where the muscle gets deeper, and there's your trigger point for your tendonitis. And there's a trigger point on the leg bone on the outside, about halfway up, which also feeds pain up into the back. So that's an interesting one. So we'll do the other side. We've got the middle quad. So either your spoon or your Gua Sha tool. You've got your outer quad, your IT band, the gallbladder, inner quad. And then we had the adductors, so anything on the inner line of your thigh, especially as you move towards the pelvis, higher up you go, the more likely it is to be your adductors and not your quadriceps. We're nearly out of time. I haven't got it all done. I wanted to finish with abs. Calves. So the abdominal points for Gua Sha are really good for digestion and motility, constipation and things like that. Outer quad. So when you've done this class, you want to drink some water because you would have released a lot of toxins into the bloodstream, and you just need to do a bit of a cleanse by drinking some water and just get that out of your system so you don't feel a bit yucky the next day. So coming to standing now, I'll finish with abdominal points. So think about the bottom of the rib cage. You can come under the ribs with the spoon or with the Gua Sha tool. So that's going to be your diaphragm, upper abs. It's always nice to get into the diaphragm. You're just working from the midline downwards and following the contour of the ribs. So then find your belly button, and you're going to go from the bottom of your breastbone to the belly button, and you're going to do 5 downward strokes. So this is going to be working on your vagal system. It's going to help with your digestion. This is 4, this is 5. So then you come halfway down the rib cage and you do 5 just to the level of your belly button. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And then go to the other side from the breastbone, halfway down the rib cage, 5 strokes down to the level of your belly button. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So then you go to your belly button and you go from the belly button to the pubic bone. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you come out to the line that was midpoint under the ribs, level with the belly button, you're moving down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you move out again and just contouring inside of the pelvis from the belly button down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come back to the belly button, move out to the halfway out mark, and you're coming from belly button down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then out again, just on the inside of your pelvis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's your abdominal points. And then just finish with your hamstrings. Just come up and down the hamstrings, outer, middle, inner. Do that again, outer, middle. We didn't do those because we were sitting, inner. So then the other side, outer, middle, inner. One more, outer, middle, and inner. So that is the whole body with a small Gua Sha tool that you can either find something in your house or you can buy one on Trade Me. And go and have a glass of water now and just get rid of some of those toxins. And maybe next time we'll do the neck and the skull.